Sorry, Jamie. Gotta do what I gotta do.
All right, guys, this time it was the filter. Yep, the filter. See, now we're passing. So, got just troubleshooting live. Okay, so now we got through that. So that was fine. You see, you have to just do a process of elimination to see. So now I know my circuit's probably okay, but this filter needs to be thrown away. So now it says disconnect at from patient. From patient means the port coming from the patient, so the exhalation side. So please note my hand is still covering because it hasn't told me to unblock. So you'll disconnect from patient and then hit accept. You need like 10 hands. And then it's going to say connect to from patient, so now we're going to put it back on. Because it wants the side that was coming from the patient. And then hit accept again, and it'll keep going. And now it's doing circuit resistance. We did our leak, our expiratory filter. Now it's doing its resistance. It's just testing the resistance of the circuit here. Unblock Y. That's when you go, thank goodness. Press accept. Again. Now it's doing compliance. Compliance is testing for how compliant our circuit is. Does it let the air through easily or not? Some circuits, the plastic is more compliant than others. So that's what it's testing for on this one. Now it says block Y again, so I did, and I hit accept. There's water in humidifier. It says if yes, press accept. If no, press clear. So I'm going to press clear because we don't have any water. You okay there? Okay, now it says unblock Y. When done, press accept. And I'm reading everything right from that orange screen, so that's what you guys will need to follow. SST testing completed. Normally, we wouldn't have to override. I have to override because we don't have oxygen. So, but normally it would, once this was done, you would say exit SST and it would restart on its own. If I exit SST now, because it hasn't passed, it's going to loop me right back into another SST. And it won't let me do anything. So we're just going to override it for now. Press accept. So the vent is going to shut down and restart on its own. It's part of this process. So that's normal. And then you're going to have the option to do an SST again if you wanted to, but of course we don't want to. And then new patient or same patient. This is the only ventilator that doesn't have standby. All the other vents have standby, and that's just kind of like a pause mode. You can say, put everything on hold. I need to not ventilate my patient for right now. That could be used in multiple different circumstances. Say your patient is in the ICU going to surgery and going to come back to that room when he's going to go back on the vent. What? Yeah, transport is another one. You don't want to have to reset everything, so you put it on standby. It'll pause everything, but keep all your settings. On this one, the same way you can do that is just do same patient. So this has no standby, so if you're going to take it off a patient, but you're going to be using it on the same patient when they come back from wherever it is they went, then you just turn it off. When they come back, you use same patient, and it'll have all the same stuff that it had before. But to put it on a new patient, we're going to hit new patient, because that's what we want to do, new patient. And then you'll see it has a box for ideal body weight. We don't use that, no one does, but you can, what the point is that you can put in the ideal body weight, and then the ventilator will set settings that it thinks is appropriate for that size ideal body weight. So I just typically bypass it, but you do have to touch it to get to the next spot. You can't just, so you have to at least touch ideal body weight, and then hit continue. And then we're going to have new patient setup. And from here we can set our initial mode that we want our patient to be in. So we have a place for, it says vent type, and that would be invasive or non-invasive. So once you touch it, it turns orange, and then you turn your dial, and it could change to non-invasive. No one uses the vents for non-invasive. They all have the option, but we don't use it. So that vent type on this one needs to be on invasive. So you turn your dial back to invasive.
But if like push came to shove and you were out of
Yeah, you can use that. Yep. And then the next one here, it says mode. So you'll see we have assist control, SIMV, spontaneous, and bi-level. Bi-level, way the end of the term, don't worry about it. That's one of those specialized modes of ventilation I was telling you about. The ones that we'll mainly be using is assist control and SIMV. Yes.
I'm sorry, you said the ideal body weight, we don't have to have it for the ventilator? Or
Well, we have to have the ideal body weight, but we don't use the setting on the ideal body weight on the ventilator. So you just touch it and hit continue. AC, SIMV, spontaneous, and bi-level. This is the one ventilator that uses the names that it's supposed to. AC is AC. It's the only one. SIMV is SIMV.
And SIMV is spontaneous intermittent.
Synchronized intermittent mandatory ventilation. SIMV. Remember, assist control, and of course we're going to cover this in depth, but assist control is the mode that sets, is going to give the ventilator is going to give a mandatory breath even when the patient triggers a breath. So it's going to give your set rate. So say your set rate is 12, it'll give 12 breaths per minute. If your patient triggers more than 12, it's going to kick in and give the set volume or pressure that you have set. In SIMV, if the patient triggers a breath, it's going to allow the patient to take their own breath.
So you can use either pressure or volume.
Right. So we do the mode, and remember, there's two parts to every mode. To every mode, we have to have the AC SIMV, but then we have to have the volume or pressure component of it. Remember, it's not just one or the other; they go together. So we'll set that. So then, under mandatory type, you can do PC, pressure control, VC, which is volume control, and VC plus, which is this. VC plus is this vents version of PRVC.
What is that?
VC plus is this vents version of PRVC. PRVC was, remember, it's pressure regulated volume control. It's the one where we can set pressure and volume. So you're always going to have two parts here. We have to pick AC or SIMV, and then pressure or volume or both. Everybody okay so far?
Yep.
All right. And then we have trigger type. V with a dot over it is always flow. So we have V trigger or pressure triggers, which flow trigger or pressure trigger. Flow trigger is the preferred one that you will use.
Flow trigger or pressure trigger?
Yeah, your options are flow or pressure, but everybody uses flow, and I'll teach you why more about that later.
What's the pressure trigger look like?
It says P T-R-I-G. T-R-I-G, trig. P-trig.
So in the flow trigger.
It's E with a dot over it, and then the word trig. T-R-I-G. Okay, so we do that, and then you hit continue. So you set all of those where you want them to be and hit continue. And now it gives you the place to actually set your parameters, your rate, your tidal volume. So we've got F for rate, remember frequency. One of the other nice things about this vent is if you don't know what something is, because every vent, of course, has different abbreviations as well, hit the button, it'll turn orange, and you look down at the bottom. This says VT, and it says VT equals tidal volume. So if you're not sure what something is, push the button and look at the bottom in the orange. Orange is always directions for you guys, so always don't forget to look at the bottom. So here we have, and you'll see, I just want to point this out because this is about to change. At the top it still says vent startup in progress. That means we're still setting the vent. So you'll see, you can see that we have our AC, VC, which we've already said we wanted, flow trigger, and so here we can set our frequency at 10, our tidal volume. V max is the flow on this ventilator. V with a dot over it, then the word max is flow on the PVA 40. And then V sensitivity is our flow trigger where we're going to set that. O2, where you set your FiO2 that you want. Then the second row, TPL, is basically an inspiratory hold. It's plateau, but we don't use that. So that's always going to be on 0. It's asking, if you put a time there, it's going to give you a breath hold at the end of every breath, which we don't do. That would be going like this. We don't use it, so it needs to be on 0. Then you're going to see square or ramp or something along those lines. You'll see a little pattern. Ramp is where you want that to be. That's our flow pattern, which I'll talk about more later. It will all make sense. You just need to see where everything is right now.
So it's a shape?
Yeah. And then P. And then underneath this little bar, you can see your I time and your E time and your I to E ratio. So remember, you guys, when you guys are going to the vents for the first time, remember when we first started talking about them, I told you there were 4 main components to every ventilator. And once you learn how to manage a vent, you can run any vent. You just need to find out where those 4 sections are. So one was where we set our set parameters. That's where this is right here on this ventilator, right? Okay, so we've set our set parameters. So now we've told it what we want. We've told it what we want it to give our patient. So we've set everything. That's where everything's at. Then you'll see it says use knob to adjust, to apply, press accept. So now I'm going to hit accept because I put everything here the way I want it to be. We'll just pretend that I did. So now I hit accept. Now notice the top says waiting for patient connect. I've now set my settings and confirmed them, so the ventilator is now okay with me hooking it up to my patient. Not before this time though, was it ever, because in the ventilator's mind you hadn't set it. So you can't be hooking it up to a patient. So now, as soon as you hook it up, it will start ventilating all on its own. And you'll see that that goes away. It senses that the patient was hooked up. Randy, are we okay on time? Okay. So now once you do that, you're going to get to the other screens that you need that are part of our 4. So this was our set parameters down here at the bottom. Patient parameters is up here at the top. So we've set where we want it to be. Here's the actual readout up here at the top. So you'll see from left to right, you have P peak. That's like your PIP, that's your maximum pressure that's reached with each breath. P mean, mean airway pressure. PEEP, this is your actual PEEP reading. As remember, these are actual numbers. This is what we set. Here's what is actually happening. Your I to E ratio, your rate, your tidal volume, and your minute ventilation. So that's all that. Here's your waveforms. Yes. Graphics. Oh, plot setup. That's where you can go in and change what you can see on there. And then down at the bottom we have alarms.
This is our third.
No, 4th. Graphics was our 3rd.
Oh, good.
4th is alarms. So there's where our alarm settings can be set. Set patient parameters. So set parameters, patient parameters, graphics, and alarms. I know, I'm sorry.
I'm going to pass out soon.
Don't do that. So for our alarms, this ventilator, now every vent, actual alarms that you can set is different as well. Some have more than others. Some automatically set alarms based on the parameters that are set, and you don't have to set it, like it'll automatically put the low pressure below 10. Some you have to set every single one. So on the Puritan Bennett, here's all the ones down here that you can set. So there is a high pressure. High pressure alarm is typically set 10 above wherever your PIP or peak is averaging, never more than 35. You'll see it more than 35 in the clinical setting, but it shouldn't be more than 35. You increase your risk of barotrauma.
Along with the PIP.
Yes. High PIP is 10 above your average PIP, but no more than 35. That doesn't mean it goes on 35 for everybody. If your PIP is 15, your high pressure would be where? 25. If it's 30, where is your high pressure? 35. No more than 35. There's exceptions to every scenario, you guys. Remember, this is the 95% rule. We'll talk about the exceptions later. All right. So frequency, high frequency, needs to be 10 above what your patient's averaging. Probably not, but it depends. Huh? If you want. Or why don't you go stand by the fan? I know it's warm, you guys, but it's not like a sauna. I mean, so why don't you stand by the fan? We're almost done, so. Actually, you know what? They are all in that term 4 party. You could open that door now. That will help. Yeah, that'll help. Okay, so then we have minute ventilation. The other thing, you guys, here, to the number to the left, you'll see there's numbers here. The number to the left tells you what your patient is averaging, so that you can use that as a guide to where you need to set your parameters, which is actually on the right. So everything on the Puritan Bennett is you touch it, it turns orange, and you turn the dial, and then you hit accept to confirm it. If you don't hit accept, it's like not doing anything at all. So touch the button, turns orange, turn the dial to make your change, hit accept will confirm it. If you don't hit accept, it goes back to where it was and your change was never made. Okay? So minute ventilation is going to be set 2.0 above and 2.0 below where your patient is averaging. That is a class value that will vary widely in the clinical setting, which I'll explain more later.
Are we going to be going all over this again? I know we went over it last term, but again.
We will go over all the individual things I'm talking about. Oh yeah. I'm just telling you why I'm going through it.
Okay.
Yeah, I only do one demo of each event. That's why I want to make sure we were on the same page. So then we have, no, 2.0 above and 2.0 below. Minute ventilation. From what your patient's averaging, which will be over here on the left. So then you have mandatory tidal volume and spontaneous tidal volume. So mandatory is the machine breaths. Spontaneous is if your patient's taking spontaneous breaths. It may or may not apply. But typically it's 200 above and 200 below. So if your tidal volume is averaging 500, you put the high at 700 and the low at 300. The exception to that is when you have low tidal volumes. If your tidal volume is below 300, you can't use that same ratio because it'll put a 300 tidal volume. We want to know way before it gets to 100. So if your patients, once you get below 300, we use 25%. So you take 25% of the tidal volume and subtract it, and that's where you're low. So if your tidal volume is 300, 25% of that is 75. So you put your low tidal volume at 225. See how that works? Okay. So 300 and below, use a 25% rule for above and below. Above that, it's 200 above and 200 below. Okay? All right, so let's see. Oh, there is apnea set up. That's your apnea backup. So if your patient goes apneic, the machine will kick in and breathe. Default time is 20 seconds. Other than that, unless your patient's on a really low rate, it'll be set the same as your settings are. But always 100%. Apnea backup will always be at 100% no matter what the FiO2 is. Because if our patient went apneic, we want to provide the support for them. You'll see up here in red are your alarms. Red alarms are high priority alarms. They also sound different. Oh, I got it silenced, sorry. You'll hear that. You'll get to know your ventilator and your alarms, especially depending if you go work somewhere where there's a key. I'm going to show you the differences in the alarms, but this is high priority. You can tell by the sound of it. Also, anything that comes up in red on the screen is high priority. That means you get in there and you get in there quick because there's a serious problem with the ventilator and you need to find out what it is.
I feel like we're about to start like talking.
Yeah. Going off in outer space. I don't think I'm going to be able to simulate the other alarms because we have an O2 alarm, and as long as that's going, you're going to get a high priority. But when we can hook it up in the class back up with oxygen, I'll show you the difference. Number one, they're on, see over here to the left, there's this top one, then there's a middle one, and then there's a bottom one. So depending on which alarm, it will light up different. So this is more like an orange, and this is more like a yellow. So high priority, medium priority, low. Low priority might be like a minute ventilation alarm. A medium priority would be maybe a tidal volume. I can't remember which ones they classify as medium priority. But obviously low is not as urgent as a high priority. So as you hear the different sounds, you'll know whether you need to go into your room urgently or not to see what's going on. Also up here, you'll see your sensors for your air compressor. Tells you now, because we're using the air compressor, it says ready and on. Normally it would just say ready. That tells you the air compressor is ready to use. Batteries ready and on. If we unplug it, which I'm not going to because I got to crawl underneath the desk, the on indicator will come on and let you know that your battery is being used. That's not meant to take a patient outside around the parking lot battery. That's like emergency until you can get to another power source battery. They do not last long. I think you could imagine that a battery inside a machine like this would not last very long. So it's very short. Down here on the bottom, you have volume. So if you want to make sure that your alarms are on the highest volume, this is a 2-minute alarm silence right here. This is a reset. So if I silenced it and when I want to reset it, that's the next button over. Then over here on this side, you have 100% O2. Which we will use for suctioning. You'll push that button, your patient will get 100% O2 for 2 minutes. Of course, we can't do that right now because we have no oxygen. Manual inspiration, if you just want to give your patient a breath. We rarely use that feature anymore, but it is on all the ventilators. Then expiratory pause and inspiratory pause, we will use those when we calculate and learn how to do compliance and resistance. Which I'm not going to do today, I just want you to know where they are. When I teach you about compliance and resistance, I'm going to tell you that you need to do a breath hold on your patient to get a plateau pressure. I'm talking about doing an inspiratory pause, and that's where your button is. Okay? Like I said, your filter's down here. This is your battery indicator down here, which tells you if it's charging or not, down here at the bottom. Let's see. If you go to the middle screen here where the graphics are, I think that's the only thing I didn't cover. There's some other options here. So right now we see our little waveform picture. That's going to give us our waveforms. If you wanted to change them, you hit the word plot setup, and then you can change which ones come up on the screen.
What is it?
Plot, P-L-O-T. We'll cover that way more in depth later in the term, but that is where you can go and change what waveforms display on the screen. And if we go over to the little thing that looks like a clipboard, you'll see that tells you about your O2 percentage. That's not really one you'll use very often. Then you have one that has a picture of an alarm with a question mark. That's where you can go back in and see what alarms have gone off, which sometimes is useful if you came back in the room and it had silence, you could see which one had been going off. Then this next one is volume. Oh, see here, minute ventilation, that's a yellow one. I thought that was a yellow one. You could see where it came up. And then this next screen will tell you just some other screens, diagnostic screens. We rarely use those. That's again one that we rarely use, but it is there in case you need to go back in. You could look and see when SSTs were done, diagnostic codes and things like that. So, questions?
I'm sure you could find everything. It's just knowing what to put in there.
Yeah.
That's what you need to learn.
Well, actually, it's hard to learn how to find everything when you've not worked with it before, too. So, you're going to learn what to put where, but you need to learn how to get around it as well. So, that's kind of a basic overview on how to get around this ventilator and where everything is. There's not really anything about the back you need to know. So, questions?
What's in that thing?
What thing?
The big old thing on the bottom.
That's the air compressor. Yep, this is the air compressor. Some of these vents you'll see they don't have this here. This will just be a blank space. That means it has no internal air compressor. Other questions? All right. So let's we'll go back over there and wrap.